for movement disorders, tauopathies like PSP and CBD, there have been increasing number of therapies that have been designed to target the tau protein itself, or the expression of tau protein as a strategy to treat these diseases. And that's because there's quite a bit of evidence from animal models and from cell culture models, as well as human populations, where the expression of tau protein is strongly linked to the severity and the type of disease that people have. So the more tau protein in the brain, the worse the disease, whether it be from PSP, CBD, Alzheimer's disease, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So this suggests to many people that the cause, or an important cause of neurodegeneration, is what's called gain of function, or toxic gain of function of tau protein. And that means that the tau protein is normally part of neurons in the brain, and normally has a number of roles in the cell, including stabilizing microtubules and playing a role in genetic regulation as well. But something happens in the setting of these diseases where the tau protein becomes chemically modified and misfolds and may aggregate and spread throughout the brain. So the strategies that are sort of most aggressively being pursued right now are to reduce this toxic gain of function of tau. And so, for example, there are immune-mediated strategies such as active vaccines that target the tau protein itself, or monoclonal antibodies that are designed to bind to different parts of the tau protein. Over the past year, we've seen 2 large phase 2 clinical trials of anti-tau monoclonal antibodies that were designed to bind to one end of the tau protein called the N-terminus. And these were tried in progressive supranuclear palsy Richardson syndrome patients. Unfortunately, both of these clinical trials failed to show any clinical benefit of the anti-tau monoclonal antibody, despite the fact at least one of these antibodies was known to actually get into the spinal fluid and bind to tau protein. So the first attempts with anti-tau monoclonal antibodies haven't been successful, but there are many reasons why that may be the case, and there are newer monoclonal antibodies to tau protein that may bind to different parts of the molecule or different types of tau structures that people believe may be more likely to be successful in treating these tauopathies. There's also evidence in Alzheimer's disease that an active tau vaccine has shown some potential beneficial effects. And so if that turns out to be true, then this active vaccine might also be tried in the movement disorder tauopathies like PSP and CBD. As well as the immune approaches, another very exciting approach is genetic approaches to tau. And so the idea is that if you could genetically reduce the expression of tau protein, then there would be less tau protein in the brain. And in animal models, this looks very, very effective. And this may be sort of the ultimate test of the idea that tau is the cause of these diseases. So the most advanced anti-tau genetic therapy is antisense oligonucleotide that's being tested in Alzheimer's disease. And we expect that the results of that phase 1 clinical trial should be available very soon, maybe even this year. But there are other antisense oligonucleotides and similar molecules that can suppress tau gene expression. At least one of them, we think, will be tested in PSP within the next year. And eventually, there may be even gene therapy. So with adeno-associated virus gene therapy techniques, one can introduce different ways to suppress tau gene expression that may even be permanent in the brain. And so eventually we may see those, although those are not likely. Those types of trials are much further off. A third type of approach to treating the movement disorder tauopathies is to find molecules that affect the chemical modification of tau protein, because certain chemical modifications like phosphorylation of tau particularly seem to be involved in making the tau protein more toxic. So in the past, there was one of these drugs that was tested for PSP that affected one particular enzyme that phosphorylated the tau protein called glycogen synthetase kinase. And that molecule turned out not to be effective, but there are other newer small molecules that can affect either other kinases that seem to play a role in phosphorylating tau, or another class of molecule is called an oglicnacase inhibitor. And oglicnac is a sugar molecule that is found on the tau protein. And when the sugar seems to protect the tau protein from phosphorylation. So if you block this enzyme that cuts off the sugar molecule, then it may also help to protect the tau protein from this toxic phosphorylation. And it's quite possible that one or more of these molecules will be in the clinic within the next year. There are other approaches as well that are coming down the line. So there are new types of molecules that can target tau protein to the cellular protein degradation machinery. They're either through autophagy or other types of protein decay. These new types of molecules, one is called a PROTAC, or proteolysis targeted chimera, can actually bind to tau and actually move it into parts of the cell that will help to remove it. And so these are also hopefully coming, probably not this year, but hopefully in the next few years. So those are probably the most advanced types of tau therapies that we're going to see. And there are other approaches there are other treatment approaches for PSP and CBD that are being considered that may not directly target tau, but may also target downstream effects of cellular toxicity. So there are a variety of drugs that seem to affect the mitochondria or oxidative stress in cells that leads to oxidation of lipid molecules that may cause cells to break down and die. And so we may see at least one additional clinical trial of a molecule that blocks the oxidation of lipid molecules in the brain.